The storm had rolled in fast, wind tearing through trees, rain lashing the sides of homes like nature's own warning. But even the thunder that shook the earth couldn't drown out the sound of barking. It was urgent. Unrelenting. Officer Rachel Monroe gripped the leash tighter as her K-9 partner, Max, lunged toward the far corner of the basement. The old farmhouse, sitting on the outskirts of Willow Creek, had been abandoned for years, a hollow shell of creaking floorboards and shattered windows. They hadn't expected to find much more than rats or maybe an illegal squat setup. But now, standing in the cold, musty dark, every hair on Rachel's arms stood up. Max, a seasoned German shepherd trained in narcotics, search, and rescue, wasn't barking like he usually did. This was different. His body trembled with tension, hackles raised, his bark deeper, more frantic. It wasn't just a scent he'd picked up. Something was behind that wall. Rachel swallowed hard and radioed in. Unit 14 requesting backup. Possible discovery in the basement of 317, West Hollow Farm Road. The response crackled back, but her eyes never left Max. They say dogs can sense more than humans: danger, evil, fear. Whatever it was, Max knew. And now, so did she. Earlier that day, the Willow Creek Police Department had received a tip from a neighbor who claimed to have heard weird crying sounds coming from the abandoned farmhouse late at night. Most brushed it off. It wasn't the first odd report from the old hollow place. Teens liked to dare each other to spend the night there. Local legends spoke of strange happenings, but nothing ever came of it. But for Rachel, something about this call tugged at her instincts. Maybe it was because she'd been having a hard time shaking the nightmares lately. Maybe it was Max, whose behavior had shifted the moment they drove near the property. Either way, she volunteered to check it out. She didn't expect this. Backup arrived within minutes. Flashlights flickered as officers descended the stairs into the basement. Rachel's partner, Detective Samuel Hayes, joined her by the wall. Max refused to leave. The dog had stopped barking now, but he stood pressed against the brick, nose working, tail stiff. Could be a hidden compartment, Sam murmured. This farmhouse was built in 1910. Could have had bootleggers or escape tunnels. They grabbed sledgehammers from the cruiser. Each swing echoed like gunshots in the stillness. Dust clouded the air, bricks fell away, and then, finally, a hollow thud. There was space behind the wall. Everyone froze. Sam leaned closer, then stepped back sharply. There's a door. It was small, more like a crawl space hatch, and sealed with rusty bolts. Rachel's heart pounded in her throat. They pried it open slowly, the metal groaning in protest. A rush of cold, foul-smelling air spilled out. Max whined low in his throat. And then they saw it. Inside the space, barely 5 feet wide, was a crude chamber. Thin mattresses lined the floor. Toys, some broken, others oddly pristine, were scattered around. Old food wrappers, children's clothing, and drawings plastered the walls. Drawings of a house. Of a son. Of crying faces. In the far corner, curled in a ball, was a small child. Alive. They found her shivering under a thin blanket, clutching a dirty stuffed rabbit. She was nonverbal, eyes wide with terror. Her clothes were torn, and her limbs were frail. She couldn't have been more than 6. Paramedics rushed in. Officers stood in stunned silence, the weight of what they'd uncovered crashing down on them like bricks. But that wasn't all. Further into the crawl space, buried beneath loose boards, were boxes, evidence of years of horror. Journals. Photos. Records. The farmhouse had been a trafficking den. Used to hide children. Forgotten by time, but not by those who had suffered inside. And had Max not barked, they might never have known. In the days that followed, the farmhouse became a crime scene. The child, later identified as Ava, was taken to a hospital. She didn't speak, but she clung to Max the moment he entered the room to check on her. It was as if the bond had already been forged in the shadows. Rachel sat by her bedside every night. They ran DNA tests, combed missing persons reports. Finally, after a week, they found a match. Ava had been missing for 2 years. stolen from a park in another county. Her parents, who had never given up hope, were brought in under tight security. The reunion was one no camera could capture without tears. But it wasn't the end. The discovery opened up a wider investigation. More sites were uncovered, homes across the region with similar designs. Hidden rooms. Traps. Symbols. It became clear that the operation had spanned years. Rachel and Max were assigned to a task force focused on rescuing other children who might still be alive. They found 5 more. One of them, a boy named Leo, refused to speak to any adult. But he spoke to Max. The K9 became a hero across the country. News outlets ran features. Awards were offered. But Max didn't care about glory. He just wagged his tail, licked Ava's hand, and stood guard by her side whenever she cried. The challenges were far from over. Ava and the others needed years of therapy. Rachel herself began to battle guilt and nightmares, images of that wall, that darkness. The cases consumed her, and there were days she wanted to quit. But every time she looked at Max, she remembered why she stayed. Because someone had to listen to the barking in the dark. Someone had to believe. A year later, on the anniversary of the rescue, Ava walked to the podium during a town ceremony. She held Max's leash in one hand and Rachel's in the other. She looked out at the crowd and spoke her first words in public since the day she was found. Max saved me. But so did love. Sometimes, the loudest cries for help are silent. Sometimes, they come from behind walls, real and metaphorical, that we choose not to see. But heroes come in many forms. In fur. In uniform. In resilience. In love. Max reminded the world that no matter how dark a place becomes, light can still find a way in it, sometimes, with a single bark. Did this story touch your heart? Comment below with your thoughts. Has a dog ever changed your life? Share your own positive tale. Subscribe to Positive Tales for more real stories of loyalty, courage, and the unbreakable bond between humans and their four-legged heroes. Hit the bell so you never miss a moment of inspiration. Because every bark has a story.